Listen closely and answer this as fast as you can. A cookie and a piece of candy together cost $1.10.
Okay.
The cookie costs exactly $1 more than the candy. How much is the candy? Quick, what's your answer?
I mean, if you are like, well, the vast majority of people, your brain instantly screamed 10 cents.
Right. But take a second and actually do the math here.
Yeah, let's think about it.
If the candy is 10 cents and the cookie is $1 more, the cookie is $1.10. Together, that would be $1.20.
Which is obviously wrong.
Exactly. The actual answer is that the candy costs 5 cents, making the cookie $1.05. Together, they are $1.10.
And that tiny feeling of, mental friction you just experienced, I mean, that is the sound of your conscious, logical brain booting up a few milliseconds too late.
Yeah, realizing your ancient, impulsive brain just confidently blurted out the totally wrong answer.
Exactly.
Which perfectly frames our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Because every single day you create messages to persuade others.
Yeah.
Right. You write emails to colleagues, you pitch ideas to clients, you try to convince your partner where to go for dinner.
Right, yeah.
And we put all this effort into crafting logical, well-reasoned arguments, assuming we are, like, handing a spreadsheet to a rational computer, but we aren't.
No, not at all. We are handing it to a biological spam filter that ruthlessly deletes 99% of incoming messages before the logical brain even logs on.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are pulling from a fascinating book called The Persuasion Code by Christophe Morin and Patrick Renvoisé.
Right, and the authors dive deep into the world of neuromarketing to map out a biological blueprint they call the neuromap.
The neuromap.
Yeah, and the goal is to understand how to bypass that spam filter and speak directly to the ultimate decision maker in the human mind, which is the primal brain.
Because if we want to understand how to persuade you, we first have to, well, unlearn decades of marketing and communication theory.
We really do. I mean, for a long time, we've operated on the assumption that if you give a human a list of benefits and a reasonable price, they will make a logical choice.
But modern neuroscience proves we have that entirely backward.
Completely backward. We aren't thinking machines that feel. We are feeling machines that think.
So that fundamental misunderstanding is why traditional methods of measuring persuasion are basically broken.
Oh, yeah. Like customer surveys or focus groups behind two-way mirrors, they just don't work.
Why is that exactly?
Well, it comes down to how consciousness actually works. Consciousness, our ability to actively observe and report on our own experience is incredibly slow.
I mean, fragile, right?
Extremely fragile. When a market researcher asks a room full of people to rate an ad or a sales pitch, they are actually asking those people to perform an impossible cognitive task.
Because we're asking them to articulate a subconscious emotional shift that happened in literally a fraction of a second.
Exactly. Not only that, but they suffer from massive biological and psychological hurdles.
Like what?
First, you have social desirability bias.
Oh, wanting to look good for the researcher.
Yeah, people subconsciously want to look smart or cooperative or wealthy, so they alter their answers without even realizing it.
That makes sense.
And second, everyday language just doesn't have the vocabulary to accurately describe millisecond-level neurological shifts.
It's like asking someone on a roller coaster to fill out a survey about their emotional state right in the middle of a loop-de-loop.
That is a great analogy.
Like, please rate your terror on a scale of 1 to 5 while currently upside down. They can't do it accurately.
No, they really can't.
But if you track their heart rate and their pupil dilation during the ride, you know exactly how they feel without them having to say a single word.
What's fascinating here is that this is exactly why neuromarketing abandons the survey entirely and goes straight to the body.
Straight to the biological response.
Yeah, it measures the autonomic nervous system, which is the background software running your body's automatic function.
Yeah, so we're talking about tracking galvanic skin response.
Yeah.
Measuring subtle changes in sweat.
Right, or looking at heart rate variability.
And facial decoding software to catch microexpressions.
Yes, and even fMRI scans, which track the blood flow in your brain to see which areas are working the hardest in real time, or EEG caps to measure electrical activity.
Because your mouth might struggle to find the right word or tell a polite lie, but your nervous system reacts before your conscious mind even realizes what is happening.
Your body simply cannot lie.
Let's ground this in a real-world example from the sources because it really highlights the flaw in asking people what they want.
The bank study, right.
Yeah. There was this massive bank in North Africa, Wafa Cash in Morocco.
Right.
They had a huge market share in cash transfers, but they desperately wanted to get more people using traditional banking services.
And they ran traditional focus groups for years.
But those groups yielded absolutely nothing new.
Because people would sit in those focus groups and just give the expected polite answers.
Like, oh, I care about interest rates or the convenience of branch locations.
Right, nothing actionable at all. So Wafacash brought in neuromarketing researchers. And instead of asking direct questions, they conducted in-depth interviews and ran the audio through voice analysis software.
And this software wasn't listening to the actual words, right?
Not at all. It extracted parameters to identify emotional variables hidden in the frequency and pitch of their voices.
So it was scanning for markers of stress, cognitive overload, sadness.
Exactly. And suddenly, this invisible landscape was revealed. The data showed deep-seated frustrations and annoyances with traditional banks that the customers simply could not consciously articulate.
Wow.
They were feeling a profound, stressful friction regarding trust and accessibility that the bank was completely blind to.
And once the bank bypassed the words and addressed those true underlying feelings, they launched a completely new, massively successful messaging campaign.
Which shows that if our slow, polite, conscious brain isn't driving the car, we need to figure out who is.
Right. To understand the gatekeepers we keep talking about, we have to look at the actual biological structure of the brain.
To do that, the sources rely heavily on Daniel Kahneman's Nobel-winning dual processing model of the brain.
System 1 and System 2.
Exactly. He divides human cognition into two systems. Let's start with the one we are most familiar with, the one we identify as us. That is the rational brain, or System 2.
And that's the newer part of our evolutionary hardware, right?
Yeah, maybe 3 to 4 million years old. It is smart, it is highly cognitive, it processes the past and the future, it does complex math, and it reads text.
But it's also a massive energy drain.
Huge. It requires a shocking amount of calories to run. Now, contrast that with the primal brain, or System 1.
An ancient hardware?
Very ancient. This system is roughly 500 million years old. It is unfathomably fast.
And it strictly lives in the present moment, right? Like, it has no concept of yesterday or tomorrow.
None whatsoever. It has absolutely no language or words, and it is entirely ruthlessly focused on one single goal, your immediate survival.
So what does this all mean? The sources introduce a vital concept here called the bottom-up effect.
Yes, because of evolutionary biology, the primal brain dictates the initial flow of energy.
It is the spam filter.
Right. If the primal brain doesn't instantly see a threat to your survival or a massive opportunity to improve your standing, it just shuts the door to save calories.
So the rational brain never even receives the email.
That is the core issue with most modern communication. The primal brain captures our attention and dominates the initial choice.
Like jumping to the conclusion of 10 cents in our candy math problem.
Exactly, because it favors speed and minimal energy expenditure over accuracy.
Wait, so is the rational brain just a backup generator? Does it actually do any deciding, or are we just totally at the mercy of this ancient, impulsive system?
Well, the rational brain acts as a secondary system to confirm the decision, but only if the primal brain allows the energy to do so.
Oh, what does it do most of the time?
Often, the rational brain just serves as a PR department. It rationalizes and invents logical reasons for the snap judgment the primal brain already made milliseconds earlier.
Okay, so for you, the listener, trying to win a pitch or negotiate a raise, it means you cannot persuade someone by handing them a dense corporate mission statement.
Because the primal brain doesn't read.
Right, it doesn't do math. You have to speak its specific pre-verbal language.
And the sources outline 6 distinct primal stimuli that can penetrate this spam filter. But today we are going to focus on the 3 absolute heavy hitters.
Starting with the fact that the primal brain is wildly, unapologetically selfish.
Evolution demands it, honestly. The primal brain's only job is to keep you alive, which means the very first stimulus is make it personal.
We are biologically wired to attend first and foremost to what affects us directly.
Yes. If your message doesn't immediately center on the listener, like their survival, their pain, or their well-being, the primal brain flags it as irrelevant and just ignores it.
There's an eye-opening example in the book about an animal rights organization struggling with exactly this.
Oh, the donation ads?
Yeah, they were trying to figure out why their ads were failing to generate donations. They had all these tragic facts and figures about animal cruelty, but people were just tuning it out.
So neuromarketing researchers brought in eye tracking technology to see what was actually happening.
And the results were striking. The primal brain completely ignored the text and the statistics.
Completely. It only paid attention to direct, frontal views of animal faces that were showing clear expressions of sadness.
because that direct eye contact is an evolutionary trigger.
Right. The primal brain is constantly scanning the environment for relevance and urgency. When it sees a side profile of an animal, it doesn't register as a direct personal interaction.
But a frontal view, staring right at the viewer with sad eyes, triggers deeply ingrained empathetic and survival-centric neural pathways.
It feels personal, and we see this even more intensely in a study the authors conducted with wingsuit flying videos.
Oh, wow, yes. They showed participants 2 different videos of people jumping off cliffs in those flying squirrel suits.
Right. One was from the perspective of an observer standing safely on a mountain, watching someone else fly past.
And the other was a point-of-view video, shot from a GoPro, mounted right on the flyer's helmet.
And the neuromarketing data showed the point-of-view video generated 14% more attention.
That's a solid bump.
And an astounding 143% more negative thrill and fear-based emotions than the observer video.
Wait, but isn't watching someone else fly off a cliff in a wingsuit already pretty thrilling? Why does the brain care who is wearing the camera?
Well, it comes down to mirror neurons and survival mapping. When you watch someone else, your primal brain knows you are safe on the ground.
So it registers as entertainment.
Exactly. But when the perspective shifts to point of view, your primal brain is tricked. It maps that visual input onto your own body.
For a fraction of a second, it thinks, I am falling off a mountain. My survival is at stake.
Yes, the attention spikes massively because it became personal.
Okay, so making it personal gets the primal brain to look up from its desk.
Right.
But you still haven't convinced it to act. To do that, you have to overcome its absolute terror of burning calories. How do you do that? You remove all the nuance. Which brings us to the second stimulus. Your message must be contrastable.
Because in modern society, we suffer from what psychologists call the paradox of choice.
Meaning too many options.
Yeah, if you ask a focus group what they want, their logical brain will always say, give us more choices. Give us 20 options.
Sure, it sounds good in theory.
But when you actually give them 20 similar choices, the primal brain freezes.
It cannot easily compute the subtle, nuanced differences between 20 slightly different products without burning massive amounts of energy.
So it simply aborts the process and chooses nothing.
It needs stark black and white contrast. It needs night and day, before and after, pain and relief.
Right.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This explains why starting a pitch with, here is our company's history, is a guaranteed way to put people to sleep.
Oh, absolutely. When you start a presentation talking about your own history or reading a vague mission statement, the audience's primal brain instantly realizes its survival isn't at stake.
It sees no stark contrast between their current problem and your solution, so it powers down the cognitive centers to save energy.
But contrast bypasses the filter. Consider infomercials.
As cheesy as they feel to our logical brains, they are masterclasses in neuromarketing.
They really are. They don't offer subtle nuances. They show you a person struggling miserably, dramatically sighing in a black and white kitchen while trying to chop an onion.
And then smash cut to a vibrant full-color shot of someone effortlessly chopping an onion with their new gadget, smiling.
Sharp, dramatic contrast. The primal brain registers pain over there, survival and ease over here. Buy it.
So infomercials are fundamentally structured around the biology of the primal brain.
Yes, they bypass the rational brain's desire for nuance and speak directly to the primal brain's demand for fast, high-contrast, low-energy decision-making.
Okay, so we've made our message personal. We've shown a stark, black and white contrast between their pain and our solution. We have their attention.
Right.
But we still have to prove our solution actually works, and we have to do it without making the brain sweat. Which brings us to the third primal stimulus, tangibility.
We have to keep returning to the biological reality of energy consumption.
Because the human brain is an absolute energy hog.
It is. It's roughly 2% of our total body mass, but it consumes 20% of our daily energy.
And because early hominids lived in environments where calories were scarce, the brain evolved to be incredibly stingy.
Exactly. It relies heavily on a concept called cognitive fluency.
Meaning, how easy is this for me to process and understand?
Yes. We naturally biologically favor things that are easy to process.
So if a concept is abstract, relies on jargon, or requires deep imaginative thought, the primal brain will try to avoid it.
Your message must be tangible. It must be concrete, physical, and instantly recognizable.
The sources highlight a brilliant real-world test of this using billboards for duct tape.
Oh, I love this example.
Imagine driving past 2 different billboards. The first one shows a picture of a roll of duct tape with the bold text, it holds.
Okay.
To process that, your brain has to read the words, decode the abstract concept of holding, and apply it to the image of the tape.
It takes a tiny bit of mental effort.
Exactly. Now imagine the second billboard. It uses massive actual strips of the duct tape to physically hold the heavy pieces of the billboard together. It is visually demonstrating the claim
And the neuromarketing data confirmed the tangible billboard was vastly more effective.
because it provided concrete, physical proof that required zero cognitive effort to decode.
The primal brain sees the tape holding the heavy sign, and it instantly understands the value proposition.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the idea of intelligence being tied to energy conservation is fascinating. The sources mention a study about this that really flips our understanding of brain power on its head.
It really does. Researchers hooked up expert chess masters and complete novices to EEG machines to measure their electrical brain activity during a match.
And you would naturally assume that chess masters' brains were lighting up like a Christmas tree, burning tons of energy to calculate 10 moves ahead.
Right, because they're operating at a genius level. But the data showed the exact opposite.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the chess masters actually used far less neural energy than the novices.
Wow.
Over years of practice, their brains had become so highly efficient at recognizing tangible, concrete patterns on the board that they could process complex strategies almost subconsciously.
It requires very few calories.
Exactly. Some researchers now suggest that high intelligence might actually just be the brain's ability to drastically minimize the energy required to perform complex tasks.
Let me ask you a probing question on that because it feels a bit conflicting. If the primal brain is so obsessed with saving energy and we have to make everything concrete, simple, and high contrast, is dumbing down our message not actually an insult to our audience's intelligence?
I mean, it's the exact opposite. It is a biological courtesy.
Biological courtesy.
You are not insulting them. You are respecting the rigorous evolutionary constraints of their biology.
Right.
When you make a concept tangible and contrastable, you are doing the hard cognitive calorie burning for them. You are serving the information on a silver platter to a biological system that is desperate to conserve energy.
And a massive part of extending that biological courtesy is understanding how memory actually works.
Right.
Because the brain cannot and will not store everything.
Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the U-shaped curve of memory.
In cognitive psychology, this is known as the primacy and recency effect.
Right. The primal brain pays extremely high attention at the very beginning of a message or an interaction.
Because it needs to instantly assess if this new incoming data is a threat to its survival.
Like, is this a predator in the bushes or is it just the wind?
And once it decides you aren't a threat, its attention absolutely plummets.
It flatlines. It saves energy through the entire middle of your presentation, your email, or your pitch.
Then, right at the very end, as it anticipates a conclusion or a required action, its attention spikes back up.
It remembers the beginning, it remembers the end, and it completely deletes the middle.
It's kind of like how you remember a long-haul flight.
Oh, definitely.
You clearly remember the stress of takeoff and you remember the bumpiness of the landing. But those 4 hours in the middle, staring blankly at the seatback screen,
It's a total blur.
the brain just deletes it to save hard drive space. Which means hiding your best, most complex argument on slide number 14 of a 20-slide deck is a complete waste of time.
It is entirely futile. If you don't hook them in the first few seconds when their primal spam filter is on high alert, and if you don't summarize your tangible, contrastable solution at the very end when they wake back up, the message simply fails to register.
Okay, let's distill all this down for the listener. What are the key takeaways if you want to actually be heard?
Well, if you want to persuade anyone, you cannot target their logic first.
You have to bypass the spam filter and trigger the 500-million-year-old primal brain.
Make your message deeply personal. Focus on their survival and their pain, not your history.
You must offer a sharp black and white contrast that removes the paradox of choice.
You have to provide tangible visual proof that doesn't make them burn calories to understand.
And you absolutely must pack your most powerful points at the very beginning and the very end of your message, assuming the muddy middle will be entirely forgotten.
Try applying this to your daily life. The next time you sit down to write an email, asking your boss for a budget increase, or the next time you try to convince a friend where you should go to eat this weekend, stop and look at how you structured your message.
Ask yourself, are you trying to negotiate with a rational computer using logic and nuance?
Because if you are, your message is going straight to the junk folder. You have to light a fire under a survival machine.
That is exactly what you have to do to ensure your ideas actually penetrate the minds of the people you want to reach. It's a complete paradigm shift in how we view human interaction.
It is. And honestly, it leaves you with a slightly unsettling question to ponder long after this deep dive is over.
Yeah.
We love to believe that we are highly logical creatures, carefully weighing the pros and cons of our lives. But if our conscious minds are mostly just acting as a PR department, desperately rationalizing the snap judgments of an ancient pre-verbal survival instinct,
Wow, yeah.
when you inevitably disagree with a piece of information, maybe even the premise of this very deep dive is that your intellect finding a logical flaw. Or is it just your primal brain automatically rejecting a threat to its worldview to save a few calories?
Something to think about.